All right, Shalom, Israel, giving all praises to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakakadash, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, double honors to the apostle, elders of Great Millstone. My salutations to the brothers teaching the word, for the hopeful elect, soon to be elect, most high will, and to the hopeful elect, Shalom, the extended hopeful elect, Shalom. This is a lamb back, and I was watching Apostle Gabar's video. It's over for the so-called black woman. She and her dysfunction are on borrowed time, and there's a subject matter dealing with this guy. I guess it has a podcast, whatever, and he has 5 guys stating their opinion off of what this black woman said about, is white women, black men's peace, and Apostle Gabar chimed in, of course, and first thing we mentioned too that this it's not a black or white thing, and it's a spiritual thing. So you could be a black woman can be pretty as hell, but if she's not spiritual, and delightful to be with a man, and happy to be with a man, submissive when with a man, and there's going to be a problem. And I'll say that for the common man too, as well as the Israelite man. Well, we are all Israel, but I'm talking about the ones that know the truth or in the truth. A lot of Israelites men now know the truth. And this one woman also left a comment named Missy D. She said, white women can bitch and moan and be ghetto too. She's not wrong. And that's what this woman, I think the main woman in the video that they're responding to, said she's feeding off of her, which is, it doesn't really hold any weight. It is truth to that, but the thing too is that so-called white women, and Apostle mentioned it too, they know, as well as the men in the video talking about this woman, they know how to, you can still see the femininity, the woman, in these so-called white women. And some of them could be Jake. Spirit could be Jake. So that's another thing. But, and they talked about, this the main woman in this video. You see on the screen to the left of this guy. She's the one that made that statement, responding off a man she engaged conversation with, saying that white woman is black man's peace. And he said it was like, compared to so-called black family, mainly dealing with the women, compared to a so-called white family dealing with the women, or just the environment, period, is like, the noise on the so-called black family side. And then it's like having your earphones on and, blotting the noise out is like, that's what it feels like with being with a so-called white family. Because the man had a so-called white woman, that left that statement that she's responding to. And the thing is, too, like I've said, I mean, women have been a topic lately. I think more so than ever because, that Isaiah 4:1 is about to come to pass. I think it's Isaiah 4, 7 women to 1 man. So I think Most High is sharpening our minds to be ready for that. But the thing too, my personal opinion, 2 cent, 1 cent. Well, we don't deal with pennies no more. But well, the society doesn't. Anyway, I think that the when so-called white women are ghetto, they act ghetto, especially being with a so-called black man. They're still willing to go all out for that black man. They still willing to cook and be submissive to that black man. It's not really. It's a difference between acting ghetto and then with a group of girls are hanging out at the club, and drinking and getting drunk. Then these so-called white women that are home with a black man that comes home to the black man and married to so-called black men and willing to submit to be that woman and to fight for them. It's a lot of even if they're ghetto, they're willing to fight for their man. They're willing to fight black women for him. You know, if their man goes to jail, they'll stand behind him. And continue to see him, visit him, put money on his books. They'll even take a rap for him. So yeah, and that ghetto that she's talking about is what they show publicly on TV, and it's usually these so-called white women that are, that are single at the bar, at the clubs, getting drunk. She's not talking about the ones that are with so-called black men, and I think statistics prove that itself. But there is a there is a dysfunction in the black families, and especially the ones raised by black women. That's just a fact. They also talked about, she responded to the men on here talking about, how stereotypes are not pretty much believable, some to that effect, she said. And they were like, well, no, that stereotypes are, mostly true. And Apostle agreed with that. So, the thing is, too, that these women will never get it. They'll never see their place as submissive or under a man. It's always going to be equal or more. And if it's equal, it's competitive for them. It's like, they have to have as much as the man, if not equal to the man, as much as the man. And that's how it's always been. And, Apostle mentioned the curses too. And they don't even understand the curses. They don't understand. They have, Most High have their own separate curses too in Isaiah 3 and 16 on down. Maybe 15, 16 on down. But Israel is cursed as a whole. Israel is considered a woman to the Most High. Supposed to be a delicate woman. It says in Deuteronomy 28, 15 on down about the curses that a woman, then she wouldn't even set the sole of a foot on the ground for delicateness. That's how feminine and womanly our women used to be, under the orders of a man, under the orders of their power, their God, Son of God, Yahweh Yahushai. And so, and even with these women that just state got to make a statement and got to make a point to the world on these media platforms to say they're no longer an Israelite. I mean, I don't even know why. It's like they're trying to encourage women to leave the truth too. But that's that statement is out of stupidity. Because you're still an Israelite, even if you leave the truth, you're still an Israelite. That's your heritage. That's your basically your nationality, your race, if you will. So, and I think that holds true. That I mean, especially dealing with the world today. For many black men, I think most black men, even if not all, I mean, you got ghetto niggas, you got hood niggas that still love the hood women, hood bitches and all that. They still, but it's true that a lot of so-called black men that are they're trying to make sense out of relationships and how it's illogical to deal with this a type of woman. Their piece is a so-called white woman, or even another nation, Korean, Philippine or whatever. So, what scripture can I get? And they'll never, agree with the fact. Some are talking like that they believe that a man can have more than one woman, but it's not. It doesn't really register and hit until it actually happens, and then they're like, "Man, I didn't know it was going to be like this," you know. So that's another. It's just another stage of that they haven't walked yet. That you know. Um, it says Isaiah 4:1. It says, "And in that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach." Because it is a reproach. Just like these celebrities are finding out with Tracy Ellis Ross and Vivica Fox, and that once were pretty women. I mean, Tracy Ellis is still, but Vivica Fox had a little work on herself that she looks different. Um, then they using the Vivica Fox as an example, she gained weight, so she's not the petite, pretty, model-looking woman that she used to be, or they used to take her as. So, and she's 60 now, you know. Um, but now it's a reproach. That's why women are getting married now. You had a little era in the music industry with you had the tomboy uh, era out where you had young women dressing like tomboy jeans, baggy jeans, boots, and all that. Now that's not a thing. Now they trying to look sexy. You know, um, they trying to keep their hair, and they trying to get married because it doesn't look right now. It doesn't look right now. Uh, and as well as having children. That was a reproach back then for a woman not to have seed. You know, as an example of Michal with David. So, you know, the fun that they've had over the years of, you know, sleeping with many men has caught up with them, to where now they're older and they say, well, I'm still not married yet. I missed that part, because it's, they still have the little girl in them. They still dream of uh, of that big wedding, the wedding ring, the wedding uh, gifts, the ceremony, the bridesmaid, and the big wedding. On the spiritual side, we have a wedding ourselves that we prepare for as the bride of the Most High. Um, so we understand that the excitement of marriage, of hooking up with somebody that loves you for you, and but that's the marriage, the common marriage, the physical marriage, this worldly marriage is not that way. It's based on money. It's based on control, and a woman, really a man wouldn't have to control a woman if she carried herself as a woman and knew her place as a woman. They wouldn't feel like it's control. Now it's a burden to cook for a man. They don't even cook anymore. But if a man required that and she likes the man, she'll cook for the man. But then it'll become a burden to her. Like, man, I'm always cooking for this dude. Or talking to her homegirls. That's where the real chaos start. With their so-called friends. Like, oh, I wouldn't cook for him. Like, men are always trying to control us and trying to make us, stay home and and cater to their needs while they kick their feet up and watch the game. And then they'll try to be like one of the fellas. They say, well, I like the game too. I want to watch the game with you. I like football. I like basketball. I like, they'll try to, fit themselves in to be equal and think like a man. And that's not biblical. Um, it even says that a woman should teach the younger women how to be modest with modest apparel. And let's get that word modest right quick. Man, you've seen the so-called white neighborhoods. I mean, if you ever you roll through a so-called white neighborhood, and it's quiet as hell. It's like they nobody lives there. It's like they all went on vacation. Like what the hell? You'll find like a light home, and you'll be like, well, somebody's home, but nobody's hanging out in the yard and in the street, hanging on the porch, you know, smoking, drinking, loud, you know. Of course, when you're having fun, you can get loud. I mean, you can easily get loud because you just hyped up, but you know, you can still carry yourself, conduct yourself in a certain way you know, uh, without being ghetto, you know. And that's what our people they made. Basically, they made the ghetto their home. Basically they made, or even with the slang words, the bywords, they supposed to be bywords. They supposed to be offensive. That's a part of our curses. You're not supposed to make your curse a blessing. You try to get on the right side to be blessed. But the women just like the word bitch. Well, I'm a good bitch. I'm a good hoe. Or they call each other hoes and bitches. It says 1 Timothy 2:9, in like manner also that women are doing themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety. And if you think with logic, women don't really like to think it think at all and deep into some. If you think too deep, they will like, well, forget about it. I'll just go somewhere else. I ask somebody else. I didn't want to hear all that. You know, talk about history. They be like, well, I don't want to hear that. But they'll take a class, a so-called white man's class, his school education to graduate, and brag about it. It lets you know it's based on power with them. Whoever got the power, they follow. No matter if it's the enemy or whoever. It can be Shabaka if he got the power. If they see Shabaka in the chariots and spaceships, and he coming to pick them up and talking about, this is for the love of black women. They hopping on the ship. With shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broided hair or gold or pearls or costly array. And that's what they base their life on, costly array. And they, so to speak, get it from the so-called, I mean, they follow the so-called white woman too. They just they become the epitome of it all because they're the head woman of all the earth, you know? So if Cyndi Lauper comes out and say girls just want to have fun and they want, and because they didn't see black images on the TV. This is before the 90s and all that, or when it wasn't that much so-called black people on TV. Cyndi Lauper, the girls just want to have fun. Madonna, Material Girl, and they wanted to be like that. That's why they got blonde wigs on, and that's why they trying to get butt implants when they already have a shape back there. A lot of them, but Most High, that's being taken away because they're not eating right. The diet is not right. You know, and all kind of other stuff, man. Lightening their skin, you know. You see people like Nicki Minaj, she's a whole different, look like a whole different woman. She was a pretty woman too, a pretty brown skinned woman. Now every time you see her, she's pink hair, purple hair, whatever, blonde hair, blonde, well, wigs, whatever fits her according to the image she allowed herself to turn into, according to this worldly way, this Hollywood way. And then the first thing, one of the things that come out of her mouth is Hollywood didn't change me. Yeah, Hollywood changed your ass. Now she could still talk about hood shit all day. That don't mean that you're that same person. Well, and that's another question: is blonde hair? Because so-called black men call them queens and all that, but which we know what where queen goes back to. But are they, if they change their hair color and and eye color like Tiny, if they, T.I.'s wife, or change their body, they leave the natural way. And it even says that in the scriptures, they've left the natural way, which means laying down with a man. They've gone away to themselves, become lesbians and all that. But is that selling out? It says, and let me look at the word modest. I'll start to close out because I don't want to make this long. And really, they just because they love entertainment, fame, and they love their idols, which is Nicki Minaj, Suki Red, and Sexy Red, and Cardi B, and all them. And all these women are strippers. All these hoes are strippers, and they'll say they hoes. They'll say they hoes, and then but if you call them a hoe, which they say they are themselves, then these women still got a problem. And then one thing about it is too, most of these women don't hold accountability. They say, well, why you like that so-called white woman better than me? Well, do you cook? Do you clean? Do you love your children? Are you submissive? Are you modest? Do you take care of your man and what matters? Or do you cause trouble? Do you cause strife? Are you a busybody causing, spreading rumors, what have you? I'm telling you, most of these women that are, a lot of these women, I'll say a lot of these women that are married, I'm talking about the common women, the women in the world, when they're married, they talk more shit about their men than anybody else. To their girlfriends, yeah, they gotta go see this nigga. You talking about your husband? Yeah, I love him, but that nigga get on my nerves. Fuck that nigga. I'm about to leave that motherfucker. And they got children with this man. And they'll tell their children, they'll make their children think evil against them. It's all in the curses, man. But this is
Strong's G 2887 Cosmios.
Cosmios.
Thayer's Lexicon, related entry,
Cosmios. Kind of reminds me of Cosmo, a particular kind of thing, different than others. A good behavior, well arranged, seemly, modest, different from other women, I would say, orderly, of a man living with. See, and that's why it's good to not be around the evil black woman of today. Because, when all hell breaks loose, she's going to be looking for all kind of men, and she's going to get them done away with. She's going to get them killed. Now, if you go back to Eve, even in Genesis 3:20, it says Eve, Adam's wife, Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. Mother, you can go into, what do mothers do? They nurse. They take care of. So, they talking about, well, yeah, I ain't going to get with a man. I have to help and all that. Well, that's what women supposed to do. It says when a man gets a wife, he gets a possession, and she becomes a pillar of rest. So, that's another clue to when the world is out of course, it's like it hasn't been nursed. You know, something's off. Somebody's not. You know, and it, of course, Israel as a woman didn't nurse the earth. That's why it's chaotic. But you know, now that Israel is waking up, the men of the Lord waking up, the woman should do the same. But that's, you know, here and there. That's far in between, because it's only a few good women now. You know, even it says in the scriptures that the way of life, paraphrasing, used to be white. You know, it's, you know, gates of salvation, paraphrasing, used to be wide. Now it's narrow, where one man can enter at a time. So you're gonna have less, uh, you know, you're gonna have less submissive women. You're gonna have less holy men, because the world has gotten waxed worse. You know. Uh, so you know, I mean, if women tend to be competitive and they understand that, they would look at the so-called white man saying, "Well, what is she doing to attract the black man from us?" You know, and you already know what it is. It's being submissive. It's cooking and it's cleaning for them. Hey, you ask average couple of average so-called white women, even more than that, do a survey, and they say, "What? Why you like the? What things you would do for your black husband?" Well, I do everything for him. I cook, clean. You know, I stay home when he wants me to. I'm a homebound woman. You know, if he wants me in a dress, I'm gonna put on a dress. I don't really remember any kind of disagreement of a couple I read about or even seen or knew about, that interracial couple that the so-called white man, I mean a white woman, had a problem married to a so-called black man. So, you know, the accountability is like, man, I need that. I need to get on my shit for you know, if it's a problem to you, I need to see what I have to do as a woman to you know, because obviously it bothers her. It don't bother me with the black woman being out of order, because we don't even look for them. They can be out of order. They can marry the so-called white man. You know, they usually kind of, you know, get like, damn, you know, because, you know, they do get a lot of the natural pretty ones. But when you grow out of that and you start to understand, you know, and we understand this truth, it's just like, you know, it's like, you know, yeah, man, they can have them, man, you know. And that's why apostles say, hey, go get you a, you know, white woman out there, you know. Or even one of those, you know, that's a Jake woman, but she looks like so-called, like a Tina Marie, or like a Cameron Diaz, you know, or, you know, the Quincy Jones's daughter. They Israelites, but they especially what's her name? The other one. She looked like she could pass for a so-called white woman all day. You know, but you know, even the so-called black woman got a problem with a Latino woman. She'll talk shit against her. She got a problem with everybody, basically. You know, so yeah, these things hold true. You know, dysfunction in the family, chaos in the family, children growing up out of order, talking shit to their parents, no man in the house, talking shit against the man, divorces, high rates of, you know, growing poverty, you know, even comparing the 60s to now, you know. Uh, I think one of the realest, I guess, TV shows that set an example, and it wasn't the greatest example. Good Times, when James and James John Amos played James, still whipping his children, you know, disciplining his children, but they implemented that the black woman belief in there with Serge Bourget, to where she would stop him a lot of times, and kind of rule the house with that mind state, you know, override what he had said or thought about, even concerning his job and all that. So, you know, hey, that's what went down. And I think that show was actually came out in the '60s, if I'm not mistaken, based in on in Chicago projects. But we got projects all over the place. We got so-called middle class all over the place, where some blacks are doing all right, but a lot of our people are still single. A lot of these women are still single, and I think that's the reason. That they don't want to be submissive, and they don't want an orderly man to give them orders or order their house. Especially even their own children. And I mean, that comes out of the loins of a man. But they said, "Hey, I'll take my children away from you